Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel. This is the Powder Puff edition. Today, I want to ask you, were you thinking of new jewelry? I have a picture of handcuffs up here. Today's topic is actually the changing statements. So, does anyone have any kind of input or feedback about Ryan Hilligus? And we all know he's Teresa's ex-boyfriend. And some of his statements. Okay, well, on this slide it says that at the 11/405 interview, I guess he stated they had dated off and on for 5 years. He was just a good friend of Teresa Hallback. Is anyone talking?
Nope, just
Okay.
follow along on the slide.
Okay. Well, this first slide is just about Ryan Hilligus' strange statements. He pointed Wiegert to the small box from a Canon camera that was in the computer desk drawer. He stated he and Scott were brought into the restricted area of Avery salvage yard on 11/7/05 and only stayed for 15 minutes. He wasn't accustomed to Teresa Hallback's habits. This is what his trial testimony was, but knows exactly where her dirty laundry or camera box are. I mean, how strange is all of that?
I think it's Ryan trying to protect himself and remain. I don't know what the proper word would be.
Attached.
Well, innoxious. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know if it's night or day. The last time he sees her, what his statement on from 10:30. He just wants to be known as being involved, but not really involved enough to say that he knows anything.
For someone who's trying to present as being extremely helpful, he's trying really hard to remain detached from the whole thing.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So, on the 8/12/17 interview, when asked if he had any knowledge regarding Teresa Hallback losing the ignition key for the RAV4 or damage caused to the front of the car, he doesn't provide any details regarding either of these questions. I mean,
well,
he
shouldn't have done either, because all he's done is I think he's given himself away under all that calm exterior that he presents as being on top of it, thoughtful, mindful of everything that's going on. He's kind of. I've lost my thoughts. Sorry, I'll let you go.
On 10/23/17, he stated he couldn't remember who he had spoken to or where he'd gotten the information about Teresa Hallback making insurance claim for the damage on the RAV. And he does not recall his whereabouts during the week of October 31st through November 5th, although he reviewed his phone records. I mean, come on. He's...
Well, Kratz did come up with an alibi for him just like within the last, 6 months? 8 months?
It was 4 or 5 months ago. He did.
Yeah. Yeah, he said he was in some town with his girlfriend.
That's right. Well, we have to look. If we're looking at this, I believe thinking that Ryan should have been immediately treated as a suspect or boyfriend. He visits the house. He's still involved in her life. Maybe not, in a connected way as a boyfriend, but he's still connected to her life, and he was never treated that way. In fact, it was just the opposite. He was used as a investigative tool by Bassmatter. I think, and Weger probably to some degree. I think that we get this information way after the fact. We see it and say, "Wait a minute now. He's the boyfriend. Why aren't you grilling his ass?"
Now, let me ask a question. He's with his so-called girlfriend, right? Yet he provides, he printed out Teresa Hallback's phone records.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So,
and the very first interview, he admits that they had dated on and off for 5 years. The one on 11/4 of 05. So they right off knew that he was her ex-boyfriend.
And if he spoke with Teresa Hallback on the 30th, when he says he dropped something off, and doesn't remember the time, or if it was morning, afternoon, or night, or even what it was that he dropped off.
That's right.
What?
They cost a lot, but they put.
What was that, Sean?
Sorry.
Well, it's like, really? Are you kidding me? Are you serious? Oh. And he doesn't believe that Teresa had a private side that he didn't know about. They were open with each other.
I think, Sammy, if I could just comment, I think he was doing a CYA, cover your ass. I think he was being very strategic, what he was saying and what he didn't say, and he was trying to be as helpful as possible, and not shine the light on himself, because he knew if he had said the wrong thing or cast any form of suspicion on him, he was going to be in serious trouble. But I think Wizard said it. He should have been immediately taken out of that house. Same with Scott Blowdorn.
Absolutely.
You don't have. You ask any law enforcement agency around the world, apart from Wisconsin, the number one suspect are the involved in a murder are the people that are around you, that
Absolutely.
You have contact with.
And especially if it went down like they're saying.
Correct.
Absolutely.
When the cops get Teresa's name, the first thing they do is they build up a picture of the immediate people around her.
Yep.
Ryan Elliger, Scott Blowdorn, Mike, all of them, they would have come right up immediately.
That's what they do. They're supposed to build that circle. Don't they build that?
Scott Blowdorn and Ryan Elliger should have been number 1 and number 2 on their list before they even left the police station.
Correct.
When those cops got her name, when those cops got Teresa Hallback's name, they don't move until they put a team together. They've got an office separated, chalkboards, whiteboards, phones, you name it, all the resources there. They go in, Teresa Hallback, type it in, right, bang, bang, bang. Let's have a look at these two. That's the first thing they do.
They should have also cleared that house and did a forensic exam on it.
Well, in light of the very fact that they should have been the first people looked at, you got to wonder, since they didn't have, they haven't. The whole thing's a frame up from the off, and you can see that in the way in the procedure that they followed during their quality investigation. It's a fucking joke.
Well, isn't it funny? Isn't it funny
textbook
he knew?
suspect number one move into the alleged victim's house.
Yeah.
Where's he
Right,
staying?
yeah.
On the sofa or in her bed? If he's the one coming up with her property, it suggested to me that he's been through her room.
Exactly.
He knows fucking every detail about Teresa because he's been through her room. He's read her diaries. He's been through every box. He's in. Oh, he's
Probably slept in her bed.
Yeah,
look,
but did he know? Was he know the one that gave the police the number for her gynecologist and that as well, and her
That's
vibrator?
correct.
and everything, giving her access to the room, virtually walked him up to the door. And said,
Well, let's back up. Let's back up from that. Let's back up from that. He had access to her computer. What was on there that got removed?
This is. I'll tell you what.
Right. That's what I wonder. That's what I wonder too. Yeah.
I'm actually beginning to wonder now, because if this is really, really more than just a simple killing, I think there is a possibility that Ryan might have been put in there to search the flat for something after she was murdered.
You guys think that maybe Ryan was helped in crafting whatever statements that he gave?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Of course.
yes.
He's got to make a statement because he's one of the primary people looking for her, allegedly. So he's got to give an initial statement. Now, once he's given an initial statement, what they do is they concentrate on the detail around that statement. If they need him to adapt this, like they say, they speak to all of their witnesses before they give evidence. They can fine-tune it as they go. And Kratz masterfully paraded all of the change of statements and the different things he was saying whilst they were on the witness box. He tied them down to evidence given in court, and that's what he used. And how it's clever manipulation, but he's lied about so many things, and yet nothing's been done about it, and it stinks.
How flimsy?
Stinks.
How flimsy is it? How flimsy is it that he used taking care of her cat that he picked up from the vet as a way to move into her house?
Her cat, the only thing he was taking care of was himself. Don't worry.
Uh-huh.
He was in Teresa's house. He was looking for something. That's the only reason he could have been there. He was worried about something. He was looking for something. It might not have even been for him. It might have been related to her work. So it could have been anyone from law enforcement asking him to do a favour, since law enforcement had done his dad a favour 30 or 40 years ago, whenever it was. Listen, your family owe us. You fucking do what I'm telling you. And he's got to do it. Because that's the bar out there, isn't it? Yeah. And since they've got his dad off it 40 years ago, the bank fraud, I reckon, there's an awful lot going on there. It's nice to have a bank manager in the pocket, isn't it? Because no one would know better how to hide your money. Well, these are the people, I reckon, because the Kusurek, Petersons, the Hermans, they're all fucking at it, yeah? They're all raking it in somehow. And they needed Ryan's dad to hide the money for them. So he's done that. Fine, but he's dead. Can't help him now. But Ryan can.
Well,
he can get into troopers and he can find what they need. Photographs, perhaps, negatives, chips.
He's become very well connected.
Wow.
You know.
And
it's fair to say over time his statements have changed enough. You know, even from the beginning, like you said, Sean, there was enough question for them to have him at the top of the list.
He should have been at the top of the list before they left the office, as a matter of routine. As a matter of routine, which wasn't stuck to. How can you call it a quality investigation? You haven't even stuck to the textbook.
Step one, check closest to you.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
And what you do is you work out in an expanding circle all the way around. You use what resources you got, you spread out like the tentacles of a disease until you find the bastard that done it.
You limit.
But was
I'm not saying Ryan Illigas done it, but he's in it somewhere. He's in it somewhere. He might not even be the killer. But he might, I think he's definitely involved in the planting. He's definitely involved. But it's still,
when you're an investigator, you're compiling a list of people because you
Of
have
God.
got to follow the evidence, and they did not do that.
How
And
did
this
it ever
person
slip
right
up in
here
court? I swear to
should
God.
have been primary on the list, just
An
just
English
as a matter of investigation.
barrister would have chewed that up, spat it out for breakfast.
Yep.
An
You're
English
supposed
defense
to
lawyer.
eliminate from
Same
inside
here.
out, you know,
Yep.
from the
Yep.
closest to you out.
So, you know, Butin and Strain dropped the ball there, because I'll tell you what, that should have been the first thing that they jumped upon. And they couldn't do that. But what they could have done was they could have insisted that no one else was, since no one else has investigated, you know, you want him to provide evidence of that, and he can't do it in the case of Ryan Elliott. He can't. Kratz couldn't do it. Kratz was just doing as he's fucking told, same as Ryan.
Well, I'm sorry for the awkward start in all of this, and I'm going to say right now, I think it's worth going on to the next person's statements, because we've got quite a bit going on in this case where we're just trying to establish the fact that there is a good reason why there should have been a longer list of people, Danny suspects, people that should have been really, really looked at and investigated. And as a matter of fact, he even stated that police always interviewed Scott B. and him together. And that's a little screwy to me. You know, were they like inseparable? Was one always with the other one? That's kind of puts a big question mark there too for me.
Yeah, but they didn't.
Go ahead. I'm not hearing her.
I can hear you, BB.
I can hear you, babe.
So can I.
Not me.
Yep.
Great.
I think
No, it slipped out of my mind. I'll think about it and come back in.
I think Ryan's probably been through her bedroom, searched her bedroom. He knows everything in there. He knows. I'm wondering to myself, why would he have done that? How can he have inserted himself into the victim's shoes? Just there's something not right about it. You know, they were going to search her room eventually anyway, because sooner or later they had to.
What more advantage do you have, being the ex, being in the house, having Kratz make a alibi for you? I mean, really, seriously, what more do you got? What more do you need?
It's absolutely suspect, because he wasn't asked for an alibi, and since he wasn't asked for an alibi, why would Kratz need to provide one? Why would Kratz need to back? Why would he
secure that he was, you know?
But that's bollocks, because that wasn't
more CYA.
Yeah, credibility, I guess.
Yeah, but come on, they took Man Pa's fingerprints and palm prints, but they never took Ryan Hilligesy's. Now, come on, Man Pa.
Yeah, I know.
That's,
Well,
that
I also wonder. Are you
They
all
never
here?
fingerprinted him?
Well, that we know
they're not
of.
having a go at Stephen. I think they're trying to put the family through as much grief as possible. Yeah, they're trying to drive it home now. Stephen's guilty, just through false, really, rather than evidence. It's kind of, because what that kind of fingerprint in the family does is it brings doubt into the family unit. And
after just recently going through as many dispatch calls as I went through, and hearing these law enforcement officers, the way they're talking before they've really found anything, why have they made an arrest yet? Is he in custody yet?
Is there a body?
Blah 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 blah. It just and the way they act, it's so bad. It's bad.
It isn't bad. I think what it does is it adds up to an environment where Stephen's been on the cards for a long time. this has been in the planning for some time, and it's like, bang, you know, is it all coming together yet? Have we got it? You know, is it
Well, yeah,
falling into place kind of thing?
I don't know so much. You know, it's hard to fathom between with the Calumet and the way that all fell out, but because it did feel like that there was really not really a lot of planning per se at the beginning around 11.3, 11.4, 11.5, and so on and so forth. Because the truth is, there's no way they could have known and putting the entire thing together yet. The main thing was stopping the depositions. That was number one. This is a multi-phase thing. Multi-phase.
Oh, yes.
Anyway.
Definitely agree with you.
Were you going to do Scott Taddock's too, Sammy?
Yeah. Are you guys ready to move forward to the next one?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's true.
Can you hear
Well,
me?
other than I just like to say the way Harry just kept inserting himself over and over and over again into this case, moving into a house, heading up the search party, knowing where all her stuff's at to point out to them.
Missing person posters, Benny.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, lying. Yes, I can hear you. Lying about the time frame of how long he was on the yard. Look at the statements on the yard. He was there one time for 15 minutes. When he said, what, 5 minutes?
Does anyone know when he moved into Teresa's?
2 days after she was missing, was it no?
It was 11.3 or 11.4.
Well,
maybe 11.4.
Yeah.
Right when they're
He had to get the cat. He had to get the cat from the vet.
when they're starting to get evidence, right? That's when he moved in, right? Yeah, that's where the key came about. That's when, yeah.
At the time they even get the call that Teresa's missing, Ryan's just moved into her flat. And he's not.
Yeah, it's a search party and moved in there with the cat.
For an alibi. Are you mad? Please, come on, it's comic. I mean,
Just fits together now.
he moves into her flat, she's reported missing, and he's not asked for an alibi. That's quality investigating, that is. Yeah, someone deserves
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think it should be pointed out also, you know, they printed out those phone numbers, and you guys know that he left, right? He wasn't there when the cops came. He wasn't there.
I wonder how many of their search warrants are based
Where was he?
on information that originated or came directly from something that Ryan gave them.
Well, several pieces for sure.
I will say this. In this presentation we're going to do today, he will come up one more time towards the end, and I'll show you that as we move along. My next one, can you guess?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I've got real problems with this one. Real problems.
Be quiet during this one.
Yeah. Scott Taddock's changing statements. And there, you know, there's a lot to be said for this. On the 31st,
There is a lot to be said.
He didn't go to work. This is the interview. He didn't go to work. He visited his mom in the hospital. And he got home at about, it says 15:15 here, which is about 3:15, right?
Yep.
And this is the October 11th. No, it's November 10th interview. Excuse me. Anybody that wants to jump in, go for it. We're not on a strict rule here of muting or any of that. Feel free.
Don't tempt me.
I'm ready.
I have a real problem because, and I'll tell you why. This first statement, you know, Barbara's already made a statement, and I'm not going off on no beat up on Barb. That's not it at all. But Barbara's already talked to him once, and then he gets interviewed by the DCI here on 1110, Allegedly, he takes the day off, goes see his mom at the hospital. She's had back surgery, blah, blah, blah. He runs home, changes his clothes, and he's on the road by 3:15. And miraculously, he passes Bobby. And of course, Bobby says, well, Scott's going to know what time it is. Like, that's not a setup statement. Seriously? Are you fucking kidding me?
Yep.
So anyway, instead of Bobby doing his normal thing of going over to Knox and hunting like he does every day, other brothers have said it, he goes in behind Scott's trailer to go hunting. Scott doesn't hunt behind his own trailer. He goes somewhere else to hunt.
That is so screwed up, isn't it?
It is. Oh, my God.
Bobby must pass. Scott's had it every day at 3:15 for Bobby to think, oh well, he would have checked the time. He must he's as regular as clockwork, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe he's right with him and knows every time he passes somebody he knows on the road, he looks at his clock in the car to see what time it is.
How Ken Kratz sold this crock of shit, I don't know. Which suggests to me that the whole thing's got to be a fucking fit up.
It's just insane. Anyway, moving on with Mr. Taddick. And then after the hunting, he runs back home to pick up Barb. And then they're going to go run up to Green Bay to see his mom. And when he arrives at Barb's place, what's it say here? She was standing outside with Avery and one of the sons. He had just got home at 2000 at 8 o'clock. Barb came in to his place around 9 o'clock and stayed until 11 or 12 o'clock.
But he didn't know what son it was because he didn't know the kids that much, right? Is that what you said?
Wow.
But he knew Bobby. Okay.
Correct.
And Bobby's got vehicle. Yeah.
Then 19 days later, he's re-interviewed by the DCI. Same agents, as far as I know. I wouldn't be surprised if these aren't recorded, but I'm sure we'll never get it. I don't know that. I'm speculating. He says he arrives home after work. So now we've got a major change here from the previous interview. And I'm just going to let you guys talk about this because, that's a problem for me.
Well,
me too.
11:29, he arrives home. This is the interview. He arrives home after work at the same time, he says. Went hunting until 1700, which is 5 p.m., right? On the way, he saw Bobby. Yeah, Dassey. And he found out later that he went hunting. These are statements that he made during this interview. After hunting, he went to Barb's. He didn't get out of the vehicle, but saw Stephen Avery and one of the Barb's boys standing around the fire 3 feet, I guess, away. That was burning behind his garage.
No, the fire was 3 feet high.
Yes.
Yes. Kind of hard. It was so many different stages
Yeah.
that he gave this height of the fire. Yeah.
Before you go on to finish this statement, Sammy, here's another part of this that is important in the statement itself. The first statement he gives, he didn't mention the fire at all.
Right.
This statement here, if you read this full 1129 statement, he is cued by, I don't remember which DCI agent it was, but he is cued by one of them that says, well, Barb said something about you said there was a fire.
Mm-hmm.
So
there they go again, reshaping.
That's
all
right.
of
They
this.
reshaped the
Yeah.
they reshaped the statement.
Yeah.
But he works one time, other time he doesn't work, and they don't flag it at all. That's not something that says, hey, wait a minute, this last statement was different. What's going on here, guy? Can you imagine if Stephen Avery had said that?
Yeah.
They would have had a parade.
I mean, you get over
Anyway.
this whole business with the fact that now when they're doing an investigation and he gives one initial statement and then a week or two later it changes. In any way, shape, or form, don't you think they should be keeping track of that?
I think so. I mean, especially a major change from what you did that day. One time he works, the other time he's off.
Yeah.
That's a major shift.
On the 29th of November, this is what he arrived home after work. That's his part of his
That's
statement.
exactly right.
Yeah. Whereas 2 weeks before, he's like, no, I didn't go to work.
So, before you finish this up, and then, thinking about him being the boyfriend, the actually newer boyfriend, and Calumet still hasn't allegedly talked to him with an official statement in the time frame from now until the end of March 2006. Go ahead.
Well, my thing is this. Okay, I have someone here that I'm interviewing, and it happens to come up that there now is more than one statement from him. One day he's at work and one day he's not. So then it would be vitally important to verify that he was either at work or at the hospital or both. I don't see where anybody did that, and his statements matter. Those
Absolutely,
are little red
matter.
flags, you know?
Well, and if they'd have went right then to the hospital and pulled
right.
the tapes,
That's right.
the tapes would have still existed.
There would have been some footage of him somewhere, for sure.
Well, at least in the parking not garage. Well, maybe the garage or parking lot, whatever they have there.
You think about this because hospitals really have to protect their butt. They really have to have a tool that is going to help protect them and anyone that is on their property at that time, as far as from a legal standpoint. That there would have been a way for the law enforcement to be able to backtrack and go, hey, this person was claiming to have been here. Even back then, they kept track of everything that went on with a patient. So you would think that at the very least, someone would know that he visited, and it would have been logged somewhere.
Trust but verify, is the old saying.
Yeah, but what we're forgetting here, if this was a proper investigation, everyone would have been closely looked at. And we know it's not a proper investigation.
Right.
Because if you look at the sort of the way you do a proper investigation, you start looking at the people who were closest to the victim, and you work your way out. But here, what's happened is that Stephen Avery has been targeted from the get-go, right? So they started their investigation. If you're looking at an onion, they started on the outside, not on the inside. They did the actual opposite.
Yep.
The investigators were not interested in anyone else. That's obvious, right? So if you think about it logically. What is the chance of this event occurring? You have the victim, Teresa Hallbach. She goes missing. And if you look at the time frame, who are the two individuals who are at exactly the same time frame as Teresa Hallbach? Bobby Dassey and Scott Tadich, who are the only two that can alibi each other. Scott Tadich and Bobby Dassey, right? So if you think of all the possible events that could have happened that day, you've got three people in the same vicinity at the same time. Teresa Hallbach, Scott Tadich, Ryan Hilligus. Now, and Bobby Dassey. In any other investigation, red flags would have immediately gone up. Not here, guys. Everything was swept under the rug.
Oh, yeah. That's the very point that I would like to make here because, okay, from maybe the perspective of an investigator, you're looking at this situation. Maybe let's say you're not really in that circle and you're investigating into, what has happened to Teresa. Where was she? Who saw her and who didn't? When you reach that place where they're telling you, oh, this dude has something to do with it, everyone around him who is on that property, near that property, or could have witnessed anything, you're going to go and check out. Because you're not sure. You don't know each of their relationships. If they're tight or do they
Correct.
not speak, you don't know. So this is part of how you find out more about who could have possibly have any more information that's going to help this situation, to as far as your information. But when they get to this point and there's absolutely no questioning whatsoever any of this crap, and they don't even follow through with checking his alibis to make sure he either was at the hospital or he was at work. Because if I was an investigator, I'd be looking at that going, how in the hell can he be at work and at the hospital? And I would have to know for myself, really, where was he? And I don't see where any of that was done.
No, it hasn't been done. But guys, we're deluding ourselves, right? Because if you think about it, who were the two star witnesses for the day? Scott Tadich and Bobby Dassey. So therefore, are you now going to investigate closely the statements of Scott Tadich and Bobby Dassey? Of course not. And what happened on November the 9th, in that November the 9th interrogation of Stephen Avery, Stephen said distinctively, I saw Bobby Dassey leave. Now, if you're an impartial investigator, you're going, we have a missing girl. Oh, and Bobby Dassey just happens to leave at approximately the same time frame. And oh dear Lord, he's given an alibi by Scott Tadich. Now, notice, in most normal investigations, you would want to investigate that, right? You want to get to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if your investigation is skewed, if your investigation is rushed, if your investigation is, hey, put the spotlight on Stephen and no one else, then that's precisely how it's going to pan out, right? Because remember, guys, the number one important thing is where the RAV4 was found. That meant that during the trials, when the defense is saying, well, didn't you look at anybody else? And all the investigators go, oh, we put our resources where we thought it was the best place to look, i.e. where the victim's car was. That's it. Party over, guys. Party over.
I'd just say, there's one aspect to this case is that, oddly enough, the police, when they're first being kind of informed of an incident or something amiss, in the case of Teresa's murder, they're not being called out to the scene where there's a dead body. So the first thing they're going to want to do is, okay, she's missing. In that case, we go and speak to the family. Since Karen made the report, and apparently that's where they went. So they take all of that information. They take all of that, any ex-boyfriends, or did she break up with anyone recently, who she'd been seeing, blah, 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 and all that, yeah. They just completely ignored all of that information. They're taking all of this in, and they haven't got a dead body to work with, so they've got to investigate the who's, the where's and why's, and none of the people close to her, or none of the people who are known to have seen her last. So it's they got their suspect, they got the correct man very quickly in the investigation, and that's unusual considering she's still a missing person.
When he's interviewed in March of 2006, his statement was that he was in Green Bay because his mom had back surgery. There was no mention of Bobby Dassey. He picked up Barb and they went to Green Bay. No mention of seeing a fire before they went to Green Bay. He saw a fire and Stephen Avery and Bobby Dassey standing at it after he dropped off Barb. Barb came to his place and they watched Prison Break and she spent the night. Whereas in November of the year before, he says she only stayed until 11 or so. So
That's right.
there's another piece of junk here that don't match.
Huge discrepancy.
None of the so-called witnesses' lies were investigated.
No.
None of those discrepancies between any of the statements and what they made in the initial investigation, the early stages, and then asked about later on or in court evidence, they're saying something completely different.
Well, see, this is the little game they played here, Sean, because this is CASO. This is CASO making the interview, and prior to that was DCI. So CASO can say, "Oh well, we didn't know what he said to the DCI agents." Seriously,
Right.
Either way,
Right.
the evidence is the evidence. The truth's the truth. And when you've given a statement to the police, trust me, you do tend to remember what you've told them. And if you're questioned by another agency later, and if the truth is what it is, what you said it was, then you will tell the truth as you told it earlier, because that's all you know. There wouldn't be a difference between a 3-foot flame and a 10-foot flame.
Yeah.
You would know.
Which brings us to the trial testimony where he said he was visiting his mother in the hospital and it was around 2:30 or 2:45 when he got home, if I'm not mistaken. While driving to the hunting stand, he saw Bobby Dassey and he knew Bobby Dassey went hunting. He picked up Barb to drive to Green Bay. When he dropped her off, he saw a big fire, 8 or 10 feet, and Stephen Avery was standing at the fire. And he got home at about 7:45. He watched Prison Break at, 8 p.m.? And Barb came and stayed until about 10:30 or 11.
another statement that he made also that the fire was the most memorable thing of that day. He was asked specifically at trial.
Most memorable thing. He just been to see his mum in hospital, but yet the fire's the most memorable thing.
Yeah, that fire that he didn't even mention in his first statement. Days later, literally a week and a half or 2 weeks, whatever, 10, 11 days after this alleged fire. Didn't mention it at all.
We are having these discussions because it is so very puzzling that these people would be involved when it came to trial, which is kind of really stumping me. If all of these statements were taken, do you think that nobody was leading this investigation, keeping track of each and any bit of information that you do truly establish? That's what leads you in the right direction. When you are corroborating alibis, that helps to lead you in the right direction.
The most famous, the biggest murder investigation in the history of Wisconsin. What any investigating officer, any principal investigating officer would have at his disposal is a team of detectives, and he would assign each detective to a different task, checking different witnesses, cross-referencing information, going back out there, putting boots on the ground, asking more questions, banging on more doors, constantly, before you've even charged anybody. So for Stephen to be arrested and charged as quickly as he was, without Ryan even being asked to give a alibi or, any of the changing statements being questioned or anything like that, it's all very fishy indeed.
So we've established that Scott Taddick's changing statements, there were various versions.
I think there's more to it than that. I think there's more behind that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yeah, they've definitely pressured him into something now. He's done a deal there. I think he's offered to help them nail Stephen Avery. Don't be surprised.
Well, Sean, we can't also discount because these are statements.
It should be just like him as well.
Well, these are police statements. So let's talk about this for 1 second. His interactions with Mike O'Kelly and what O'Kelly was trying to do, and meeting with Scott Taddick by himself. He drove over to Manitowoc specifically to meet with him. And, to me, that I question it because he's the boyfriend. He's not even, him and he and Barbara weren't even married yet. He's just the boyfriend.
Right.
So he drives all over to Manitowoc, takes him out to lunch to have a big old powwow with him. And of course, we don't know what was discussed either.
Do you know? I wonder. I wonder if Scott inquired of the investigators if there was a reward available.
I don't remember hearing anything about a reward.
No, but there are a lot of people that believe that Scott got paid off for his testimony.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Because suddenly some severe debts were cleared up, and then
just gone, vanished. Well, you need.
And then they're out buying a new house.
And by all rights, that doesn't just happen overnight. That is not something that people like you and me can even manage to establish.
That will take us years.
Yeah.
Your average foundry worker.
Yeah.
And no chance. Not a chance. He'll be going through the motions for 3 years at least before he gets certificates to clear him of any debt. Certificates of satisfaction do not come easy.
Yeah, it was about, if I remember right, about $9,000 worth of debt that got forgiven or paid off, whatever.
I've already managed that.
Don't forget that they were just fixing to arrest him because he owed all them back fines and stuff that he couldn't afford to pay.
Oh yeah, he went to court, and the debts were forgiven, whatever, paid off. I don't know. There's not enough detail. I'd like to know more, but we don't.
Yep. Well, it's plain to see, so far, the people that we've gone through, there's been various statements from each of them. Each of their statements are different. And this does become a problem because it's left that way and nothing is actually looked into and brought forth. Nothing. The next person we're going to look at.
Sammy,
yeah.
Sammy, we move forward. And I don't know, we're talking about trial time, but I think it's important that we at least add a little bit to this further investigation. Of course, Ryan still won't talk to anyone, but I'm talking about the 2017 investigation that CASO reopened after Zellner filed her PCR, and they went out and reinvestigated, and then this phone call where Scott is going ballistic in the background. I think it's important. I mean, I'm not trying to bash anyone. This is fact, though. It happened. We've all heard it, and he swears he wasn't on the property that day. Come on.
How many times do these stories have to change before any action is taken? Because if that's the case, then he perjured himself in court.
Oh, I'm not going to leave that out.
He's perjured himself he's perjured himself in statements he's made.
Mm-hmm.
Not perjured.
Well,
no, he hasn't perjured.
And he also says how Steve Avery ruined his life.
That too.
Yeah. Fuck. An opportunity presented itself under the name of Stephen Avery that enabled him to get out of debt, I reckon.
How about the statement?
Because not only did he do a deal with them, as far as I'm aware, I believe it was after the conviction of Brendan that he left the court, went to the bank and signed for a mortgage. Now, you'd need a deposit for that, surely. So if he's cleared £9,000 of debt, where did he find the deposit money for his mortgage? signed the same afternoon as Brendan's conviction was delivered.
Well, would you all like to discuss Bobby Dassey's changing statements?
Oh.
Can I just say something? Yeah. In regards to the phone call that Jack mentioned, how about the statement that Scott made, which said, "You had this long coming"? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what did he say? He got what he got coming.
Yes. What do you mean by that, Scott?
He got what he got coming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was this like pre-planned?
Yeah.
Did you know about it?
He should. It suggests to me a guilty conscience. Yeah, he knows something, but his attitude there is one of kind of vengeance. You know. So
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's kind of, but in a more aggressive way than just vengeance. This is more of a this is like.
Well, we have found out over time, and listening to those phone calls, there was one that really very clearly emphasizes that we know he has quite a temper. Yes. And so I believe that's just natural for him. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just part of his nature that has come out in all of this, and we know it.
Bobby was a bully anyway. Brendan was bullied badly, and they were all rotten to him. What they done to him.
It's also obvious from that phone call that Scott really hated Stephen.
Yeah. And
don't forget the statement. Sorry, Sammy. Don't forget what Scott actually said. He says, "I'm going to bury you and put you in a grave." Right, that brings up Cuss Road. That brings up Cuss Road. The burial site of Cuss Road.
Street talk, yeah. You're going to say something like that. That's the kind of thing that a street rat comes out with.
Yeah,
I want to put you in the ground, yeah. Bury you 6 feet deep, yeah.
6 feet under.
Yeah. That's gangster. So, listen, Scott. I think that's all bollocks. He's scared. He's really scared. What I do know is that, or what I've kind of learned along the grapevine is that things ain't good in the Dassey household. And yeah, he can be a bit naughty. He does have a bad reputation. Things are not good in the Dassey household.
So, in the case of Bobby Dassey's changing statements.
Oh, sorry, no, the Tzaddik household, I meant. Not the Dassey. Things are not good in the Tzaddik household.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad Barb ain't here with it.
Well, Barb kept saying, you're going to wind up with the dead sister.
Yeah. Yeah, that came out too.
I almost feel like that was I don't know, you guys can disagree with me, but I almost feel like that was from a stress standpoint. Not necessarily that Scott would harm her, but she was just so caught in the middle of this, whatever, bad decisions and surrounded by the wrong people, maybe at the wrong time, and decisions, and it's just completely overwhelming her. I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong.
Well, at a later date, there's a time where she tries to reach the stepbrother. What's the stepbrother's name?
I can't remember.
Bobby and then Brad.
Brad
Dassey.
Oh.
Yeah, Brad Dassey. Barb is trying to get a hold of him. It's calling him, and he doesn't pick up the call because he's at work. And then they have a little bit of a text back and forth, and he says, "Look, I'm working. I can't be on the phone right now. Call me back after this time, blah, blah, blah." And she says, "Well, I can't then. I won't be alone."
That's telling.
Yeah, because he shared the text messages after that call.
Yeah, I think that Barb feels the heat from the boyfriend at the time, as Jack pointed out, he was only the boyfriend, and they dated only a short while, and he wasn't really welcome in that family on that property because I feel like Barb, when she talks to her kids, and especially like to Brendan or to Stephen, she refers to Scott Tadich as him or the other one. You know what I mean? So they don't even say his name, whether that's out of fear or that's because they're repulsed by him. I think that the whole family saw it as not a good thing for her to get involved with him, with his history, temper, and whatnot. Let's not forget that as much as Stephen's incident with the cat, which he was a participant of a larger group, and he did not burn the cat. He participated in the whole ordeal, but how much that was like really, they beat the dead horse with the cat incident.
Still beat it
Scott
sometimes.
Tadich, yes.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
Scott
They do
Tadich punched an 11-year-old boy, his ex-girlfriend's son.
That's right.
He went over there,
He
he
got
barged into their house, exactly. He punched an 11-year-old boy. Who does that? He shot his own mother. So yeah, if Barbie's scared of him, I would be too.
He shot
Her
his
whole
mother,
family
but
started.
he shot his mother, but he's using her as an alibi. That's
Yeah.
I mean, how ironic is that?
Yeah, her family stopped talking to her. I think that has
Barbie's
something to do
outcast.
with, yeah,
Barbie's outcast.
because of him.
They don't talk to her. They don't have any contact with Barb whatsoever. Not Ma, not Pa, none of the bird dog.
And think about it, guys. How sad is that? Because
That's not true. They do. They do have contact. You can't say that.
Okay.
They do.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, but you're right. There was a conflict in the family from it. There definitely was. And I agree. And a lot of family members, to what I'm understanding, don't get along with him. But she does speak to her family.
Yeah, but there was a period of time. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
that's
amazing.
exactly right. What you're saying.
So, if I could just add, is there a case where you can make Scott Tadich a suspect, a murder suspect?
Definitely.
Oh,
Right.
I believe so.
Definitely.
I think it's certainly possible.
It would suffice to say that there is enough changing in the statements for that to happen, for that to be a question.
Right. So if you wanted to paint Scott Tadich in a bad light, like they did with Stephen, like they did with the cat incident, could investigators actually paint Scott Tadich in a very bad light, considering his background?
And then some.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And then some.
They
Yeah,
certainly
And
right.
what they did was give him all these statements and make him do that, so he does look like something. I think it's exactly it. Something
So
I was
that-
just
Yeah. So my point is that's why you have the gentleman's agreement in regards to the Denny suspects, right? So therefore, Strang and Buting could not point the finger at anybody else, right? That was a deliberate ploy, because if you look at Scott Tadich, I'm not saying he's a murderer, but he's definitely a person of interest. Same with Bobby Dassey. And the irony is both Bobby and Scott were the star witnesses for the state, right?
Absolutely.
And they were very important witnesses in pointing the finger at Stephen, right, with the fire. And when Scott Tadich was questioned during the trial, and Strang said to him, "Oh, but by the way, on your first statement, you said the fire was only 3 feet." Scott goes, "Oh, yeah," and brushed it off, right? And yet, the centerpiece of the argument was Teresa Horbach was cremated in the burn pit. Why? Because there was a big whopping fire. There wasn't a big whopping fire, right? And so it's interesting. I know we're diverting a bit, but it's interesting how the jury found Stephen not guilty of this, of a mutilation of a corpse, which tells you a lot. I think they were trying to send a message that it was just crap.
Well, yeah, it's obvious that Kratz and the company, they needed Scott to put that fire there, that huge fucking fire, so, like he could say, oh, well, looky here, Scott saw this gigantic fire, so that Teresa got burned up that we're telling you about.
Lord
That,
there was an article quite a few years ago after Ma'am came out, and it was about Scott Tadich. They called him, is he cleanup guy for the police, for law enforcement, because of all the dirty deeds that he's done. And there's a few items that they mentioned, what he's done and his connections. Let's not forget that with his criminal record, he also had a really good friend who is no other than Judge Fox.
They go
right?
hunting, man. That's how Bobby got introduced.
Hunting, and that before Judge Fox became a judge, he was Scott Tadich's attorney for his numerous criminal issues. So,
that's right.
And then let's fast forward a little bit. Brandon's on trial, and Scott, they call Scott. The lawyers of the state call Scott, not Barb, to tell Brandon to take a plea. They didn't call the mother, they called the boyfriend.
Scott's
or
a plant.
newly husband.
A plant. If he had roots, he'd stick to the ground. He's a plant.
Well,
Mhm.
you know, you think,
He was a liaison,
He's an
basically.
He said
Yeah.
someone's handling him, and they've got him in now.
And
that's
he's
his
stirring it in a
his reward
that
was
direction.
clearing of his debt and the approval of a mortgage. And that's
Yes.
why Barb is stuck up on getting the bills paid and the mortgage and everything else paid, yeah? Because she's strapped up to a contract that Scott has led her into, and it's all of Scott's doing. Oh, he's a big...
So in effect, you've got Ryan Hilliges, who inserted himself into the narrative. You've got Bobby Dassey, who inserted himself into the narrative, and now you've got Scott Tadich. All three inserted themselves into the narrative where they didn't have to. So the question is, why did they do it?
Right, now to get three people to insert themselves into a murder investigation isn't just rare, it's unique. It just doesn't happen.
It's unheard of.
Now, nobody wants to make
unheard of.
themselves a suspect in the biggest murder inquiry in Wisconsin history. So,
Well, you got to ask yourself that, Sean. Why didn't he run to the fucking hills, man? He's the new boyfriend.
He's keep your fucking mouth shut.
Yes.
But he can't keep his mouth shut. He's a wannabe gangster, and he's over here we'd call it turning Queens. We over here would call it like going supergrass or turning Queen's evidence against kind of your family or something like that. He's a wannabe gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah, or he was threatened also that he's going to get in a really major trouble if he doesn't comply. So he was definitely motivated.
If you're looking at the whole big picture, though, in the end, I doubt there was any threats to him whatsoever other than the stuff they threatened Barb with, like as far as her feeling threatened. But when I see this, I see him as a game player.
Yes.
Definitely. And someone's running him.
Yes. And the most vulnerable person, apart from Ryan, is Bobby Dassey. Right? Now, Bobby Dassey could have simply said, I saw no one, I was having a shower, or I was asleep. Now, Bobby Dassey inserted himself, and you know the reason why? Because he knew his uncle saw him leave. So he had to come up with a counter argument to explain why he jumped in his car and followed Teresa Horbach out of the Avery salvage yard. Right? So hence, Bobby Dassey's confession helped him, and it also was very, very bad for his own uncle. So Bobby Dassey had to insert himself in, because otherwise they would have come after him. So the last person to see Teresa Halbach alive wasn't Stephen, it was Bobby.
Bobby.
It was Bobby Dassey.
Yes. And here we are, Bobby Dassey, with all kinds of dark, sick porn on his computer, hours and hours, right? Spent looking at that. Yet the state, in the latest reply, they called it, well, yeah, maybe he's sick in his mind like that, a psychopath, but that doesn't mean that he's not truthful, right?
The FBI,
that's what they said.
Ordinarily,
Yes, when they asked him, was there a fire, he took a pause. He paused to think whether there was a fire or not. They said, he stopped. He's lying.
Well, Andy burned that cat, so that makes.
Oh yeah. Exactly.
Look, I've read somewhere. I read a statement from the guy who was at the party with Stephen, and apparently he applauded Stephen for taking the responsibility for him, but he did actually say it was me that threw the cat into the fire. Now, if that's out
it was
there, why
Yanda.
don't more people know that? Why don't the guilters get it into their head that actually Steve did not throw the cat into the fire? One of the guys who was there at the party did.
Because guilters are unreasonable. They just focus on what they want to focus, and that's it.
Unreasonable.
Correct.
Unreasonable, you can understand. I can't understand idiots. They drive me nuts.
No. They have an agenda, and there you go.
Not as nuts as they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And don't you find it very interesting when they interviewed Scott Blodorn and Ryan, they did it in the same room, they were together.
That's unheard of.
Unheard of, exactly.
You don't ask somebody to give a formal statement in the presence of another witness, because that's all
so they could feed off of each other. Yeah,
they're definitely not suspects, they're witnesses. How can they possibly compare notes? How is that allowed? That's never in your life. Never. This isn't a stolen car or a broken greenhouse window we're talking about, This is someone's life. It's a murder inquiry, for Christ's sakes. And one of the witnesses moved into her home. Sorry.
Unheard of.
Well, injects himself over and over again.
It goes against the Scotland Yard rule book. It's number one. Keep everyone away. What?
I think that's like rule number one in every single possible,
Well, if Scotland Yard,
they wrote
the textbook, so they should know. I'd love to see Scotland Yard go into this.
Me too.
If I won the lottery, I'd give them 10 million quid, and I'd just say, "Here, lads, take a couple of years off, go and investigate that for me. Pay yourselves what you like." Yeah.
So it's fair to say so far, we've looked at Ryan Hilge's statements and Scott Taddick's statements, and so far there's been quite, there's been various different versions of their statements that we have been able to sit here and kind of pick through. I'm thinking probably we will just continue our next podcast, and we will pick up from where we've left off today, next time we record.
Next week.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because there really is an awful lot here. When you look at, look at this. Look at how much of a change there is on these statements.
Sammy, can I just say one thing?
Mm-hmm.
When I was investigating the JFK assassination, normally what you will find is that the very first interviews or statements are usually the correct ones. And what happens is, over time, the statements become adaptive. Mm-hmm. They change.
Yep.
Right? And so the question is, when does the DA or when does the prosecuting team get involved? Once Ken Kratz, Fallon, all those guys, once they get involved in the investigation, what happens to the statements, right? So normally over time, they become adaptive.
Yes.
Like, you can have keywords being mentioned like fire, all these things. And so people all of a sudden, they adapt and they change their statement, right? Because they're under pressure. But normally what you'll find is the initial statements given are normally the most accurate ones.
I would agree 100%.
I agree too. Very well said. I have a hard
Yeah,
time
so
putting my mental thoughts into actual words. Sorry. But that
yeah,
was very
so
well said, and it's very
yeah,
true.
yeah. So in other words, all you need to do is have a look at their very first
The
statement
original
and
statement.
compare it to their trial testimony, right? And when there are major changes, you know that Kratz and the other interviewers have influenced their recollections, right?
Yes.
And
Or
as we all know,
interfered.
correct. So that's why you see a morphing of statements, right? Critical elements all of a sudden come up that never were mentioned initially. And so that's very, very powerful to indicate that you're right, what Bibi just said. There's been an influence by those key critical witnesses.
Yep.
I find that statements usually are built up in two parts. In the interview room, you will get a method of questioning which will lead the interviewee to surrender a series of comments which build up an initial framework. And in later comments or in later statements, what you will get from a suspect is you will get details added to, removed, or changed, but the framework remains the same. So the police will, in the early interviews, they will stick to the main facts, which the framework, and not ever need to go back to that again. But when they re-interview a witness, usually it's about the detail. It's about the small little things that have come up later and like been added or taken away, and that's where the confrontation comes in an investigation. That's how you find out who's telling the truth and who's lying. But
Well,
there's none of that.
Looking at Scott's statements, he, in the initial statement, he mentions that Barb is standing outside with Stephen Avery and one of her sons. And there's no fire mention. We've gone through that. And then over time, there's a fire. Then the next time, when it comes to trial, all of a sudden this is a 8 or 10 foot fire. So this was part of something that was, I believe, injected in there. Yeah, from the investigation itself, from the people investigating it.
And invented. To me, it looks like the fire was invented.
How does the most memorable event of that day change from being 3 foot to 10 foot?
Yep.
We also know. And why wasn't he called a liar point blank? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he's lying.
Which one do you remember, Scott?
Right.
We also know for a fact his first statement, he said Barb came around 9, and on Stephen and Jody's phone call, we know that Barb left it just after 9:07 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So that was in his first statement. So,
but don't you think in his very first statement, a 10-foot fire would be somewhere in that list of things that he might mention?
Yeah.
Correct.
Absolutely.
How about the smell? I'm going to beat this smell, the vile, pungent, unforgettable smell, as long as I live. Nobody ever mentions that.
Well, and he was supposedly burning tires.
No,
so even if it's just tires and not a body, tires still have to,
no whiff of essence of Dunlop in the air.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No odor.
Well, if there was
odor
tires,
content
can you
inside.
imagine the blackness of that? I mean, come on, you could see
Right.
that from a mile away then.
Sacred.
Yes.
My problem with all of this is
And it's heavy.
you have a man standing there telling you he saw two people standing beside a 10-foot fire that did not get burnt.
Yes.
And you believe that?
Yeah.
They're made of
Right, not.
asbestos. My ass.
Or
So-
you can go back and interview and find out exactly who was standing next to the 10-foot fire with Stephen, if the star witness couldn't remember.
I mean, I really don't care who it is. I'd like to see anybody stand beside a 10-foot fire that's been, they can tell me they see toads or something in it. And not get burnt.
They're going to have their damn clothes set on fire. Is what they're
I'm
going to
sorry,
have.
but the
It
footprint
would
of the
fry your
blaze in that,
fucking face off. Excuse
You
me,
know.
but
Yeah.
it would.
the footprint of
And
the
would
fire
Barbara
in-
then tell Brendan, go get a jacket because you're going to get cold
Oh.
next to the 10-foot fire?
Sorry for that.
Yeah.
you would get cooked. You would get
But
cooked.
but the thing is, right? I reread Brendan Dassey's testimony, and he said that both him and Stephen stood 10 to 15 feet away from the fire, right? And this is a fire that was only around about 2 to 3 feet tall. So imagine if it was 15 feet or 10 feet tall, they would have been standing next to Barb's house. So you know that it's all bogus.
Yeah.
But with Scott Tadich, what you notice, the way his statement morphed was, what fire? 2 to 3 foot fire, 10-foot fire. So his fire went from non-existent to huge.
Yeah.
Why? Because Ken Kratz needed a big whopping fire.
Right.
Whopping fire, yeah.
Big whopping fire.
Bingo.
The footprint of the blaze in that pit does not equate to
It's
a
tiny.
10-foot blaze.
It's tiny.
There's no way on this earth, and it's certainly not.
I don't
black enough.
think there ever was a
10-foot
fire on the
blaze.
31st.
I don't either.
Never in your life.
I don't either.
I mean, to be honest, if there was a 10-foot fire as well, would the gas tank not have went up and off?
Maybe
Yeah.
if you had a stack of 30 or 40
And you would have killed the
fires,
dog.
well, you would have killed everything in the area.
I don't think
Stephen wouldn't do that. He
The
wouldn't have a
scent-
10-foot
the-
fire next to the big tank of
The
propane.
scent
He wouldn't
of
do that.
rubber burning
The
is very heavy.
thing
in the
is,
air.
the thing is, I have burned
You're talking and talking and
I
talking.
have burned tires. I know the black stuff that comes off the tire. If there would have been even a 5-foot tire fire, that white tank and all of that tailings from the concrete that they had poured that's up above the pit would all be black.
Yeah.
Every bit of it.
Oh yeah.
They might have burned 1 or 2 tires at a time, but they damn sure did not have no 5-foot plus fire that was tired, because
Yes,
everything there would have been black.
Right.
It's like a traffic film. It's like it's almost like a grease. It's setting on everything.
Yep.
It's very heavy.
Well,
in the air.
Barbara said she hates when Steve burns tires because it puts the black stuff all over her trailer.
The soot.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And some researchers have put up YouTube videos of what it looks like when you burn tires.
Oh, it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's rotten. They do
Yeah.
it in Northern Ireland at roadblocks. In Northern Ireland during the Troubles, they used to set up roadblocks and they'd use pallets, stolen vehicles, and dozens of tyres. And if nothing else, it'd keep the British soldiers and the police away.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just
And
really,
that's-
really, really. This is something here that
That's how they
you know we can discuss this all night. We could.
Yeah.
Because
There
way
is
too many-
statements.
too much.
There is statements from people that say they were at a bonfire, but it was on the 30th, not the 31st.
Sunday.
And the
Sorry about
bonfire
my
that
dog.
was on the 31st, Barbara canceled it. Remember that?
No.
They were gonna have it, and then she canceled it. I don't know the reason. I forget.
And don't forget, Stephen Avery did burn some brush for Redont. Right. He burned some brush.
Yeah.
They came up with a deal, and so one really wonders whether there genuinely was a fire on Halloween, or it could have just been a small burning, but certainly nothing huge, right? And if you analyze the burn pit or the burn area, you can tell that nothing major there was burnt, right? As Mo said, there would have been fuel debris absolutely everywhere, but there wasn't. There was only a thin layer of ash in the bottom of the burn pit. So whatever was burnt there, it was only a small amount of stuff. Brendan said that they collected a couple of pieces of wood, a cabinet, a seat, and the important thing is the seat wasn't burnt in the burn pit. The seat was actually burnt away from the burn pit. Right? So it wasn't used as a source of fuel to burn whatever was in the burn pit. It was actually burnt away. So there's a lot of misnomers, but the other important thing is, out of all the things which have the lowest credence, that's eyewitness statements, right? A lot of people get things wrong when they make an eyewitness statement, but here you can clearly tell that certain witnesses were manipulated in their statements. It's obvious.
It is.
They're too close
Well,
to the
Crab
same.
said it himself. He said that he prepares his
Correct.
witnesses.
They're all coached.
Now,
They're
that's
all
more
coached.
coaching. Yeah. I
Yes,
always said
they're
that he
coached.
gives them a script and he tells them, memorize this.
They're given it. They're coached. Correct.
Well, he also teaches them his hand signs, like rubbing his mustache. And...
Yes, now that's something I wanted. Yeah, we'll come back to that. It's Kratz's little hand signals.
I think we've done pretty good discussions so far on witness statements and their changing statements. I would like to continue this conversation next week, and I have a whole bunch more here for you, and I think that probably what we will say is this is to be continued. And I just want to let everyone else know that I truly appreciate your participation. I really feel like there's a whole lot more to be said here, and the discussions will continue. But for now, for today, I just would like to say to everyone that I really do appreciate you. I appreciate your participation. I appreciate the discussion. There's a lot of good points here, and we've got more. We have more that we need to actually discuss, and I feel like, to be completely, totally honest here, we need to continue this next week. So, having said that, I want to let you know that this is my I want this to go out to Stephen and Brendan especially. Don't count the days. Make the days count. This has been a Foul Play production.